Welcome back, dear listener. Continue to rest easy as our voyage through Greek mythology drifts onward. Having met the gods of Olympus, we now step softly into the world of nymphs, muses, and gentle divine spirits that once filled forests, rivers, and the starry sky. We'll recall stories of love and transformation, of mortals who became stars, trees, or birds, each tale carrying a quiet lesson or a touch of beauty. Then we'll journey beside heroes like Heracles, Perseus, and Orpheus, whose great adventures are retold here not with noise or fear, but with calm and reflection, focusing on courage, cleverness, and peace. Our path will lead through the everyday life of ancient Greece, morning prayers, festivals of joy, sacred temples, and the mysteries of Delphi and Eleusis. Finally, as night deepens, we'll reflect on how these myths still live within us in art, language, and the shimmering names of the stars. Let this final chapter be your lullaby, a remembrance of a time when gods and humans shared the same gentle dreams. Breathe deeply and let the ancient night embrace you. Chapter 4. Lesser Divinities, Nymphs, Muses, Fates, and Personifications of Nature and Wonder. Beyond the major Olympian gods, the Greeks peopled their world with a rich array of lesser deities and spirits that touched every aspect of life and nature. These beings, the nymphs of tree and stream, the inspirational muses, the mysterious fates, and an assortment of personified concepts, created a kind of spiritual companionship in the everyday environment. In our gentle exploration, meeting these entities is like discovering friendly neighbors or caretakers behind the scenes of the world, each doing their part to make existence a little more magical and meaningful. Nymphs, gentle spirits of trees, rivers, and groves. Imagine walking through a sun-dappled forest. The leaves whisper overhead. The brook nearby giggles over stones. Wildflowers sway as if greeting you. In Greek thought, you are not alone. Nymphs are there. A nymph is essentially a nature spirit, often envisioned as a beautiful young maiden who is the conscious soul of a particular natural feature. Every tree could have its dryad or hamadryad, especially oaks. Dries means oak. Every river its naiad, every mountain its oread, and so on. These spirits are mostly benign. They live vastly longer than humans. Some myths grant them very long lifespans tied to their element. Hesiod says nymphs lived many thousands of years. But they are not exactly immortal like Olympians. If their tree dies, the dryad dies with it. This fostered the belief that one should respect nature. Cut a tree without appeasing the nymph, and you might incur divine displeasure. For our purposes, nymphs lend an alive warmth to natural places. If you sit by a spring on a summer's day, the idea that a kindly naiad is present can be comforting. You might even speak to the spring, a half prayer, half conversation, and feel heard. The Greeks often left small offerings, a few flowers, a bit of honey, simple things at springs or trees, effectively to the nymphs, like leaving cookies for the fairies in later folklore. Nymphs were depicted often as playful, tender, sometimes shy beings. They could also fall in love with gods or humans, become wives or mothers of heroes, like Thetis. The sea nymph was mother of Achilles. But in our restful scenario, think of them as friendly caretakers of the wild. Perhaps at twilight, you catch a glimpse of soft white figures dancing in a meadow that would be nymphs praising Artemis, or just rejoicing in the dusk. They rarely mean harm. If anything, they might tease a clumsy traveler gently, causing a sudden gust of wind that feels like a laugh when someone trips but lands safely. Many stories show nymphs helping heroes. For example, the nymphs of the north, sometimes called the Hesperides or others, aided Perseus by giving him valuable gear, the cap of invisibility, winged sandals, magical bag, to fulfill his quest. So nymphs can be protectors too. In a bedtime context, consider each element of nature around your house as having a protective nymph. The rustling leaves outside your window, a tree nymph singing you a lullaby, the puddle reflecting moonlight, a shy water nymph blinking up at the moon, the breeze, perhaps an aura, a breeze nymph, cooling your room softly. This kind of personification can make even random noises or natural phenomena at night less scary. They are simply the activities of friendly spirits going about their business. Old houses creak, but maybe that's just house elves or kindly lares, Roman household spirits, or in Greek terms, perhaps even Hestia's presence shifting. Anyway, not threatening. Some specific categories of nymphs: dryads, tree nymphs, notably hamadryads who are one with their tree. They are very shy. One must ask a tree's permission via the nymph before cutting it. If you do, the nymph might bless you. The wood will be strong and last because you were courteous. If not, they might call Artemis to punish you. But at night, if wind blows through trees, making a moaning sound, you can imagine the dryads are humming ancient lullabies. There's a tranquility there. Their voices are literally the wind in the leaves, which many find soothing. Naiads, nymphs of springs, rivers, and lakes. Fresh water was crucial, so people revered the naiads. If you've seen how water in a brook sometimes forms a soft, chuckling sound, that's the naiad's laughter. If water gurgles gently over rocks, it's almost like the naiad speaking in a language of babbling. The idea of a gentle spirit beneath the water's surface. Kind of like how many of us anthropomorphize talking with our bath or shower water when upset. I recall as a kid maybe talking to the faucet or thinking water understands. For an ancient Greek, that was a naiad listening. They might help by ensuring the water stays pure and cool for you. There's a myth where naiads saved a drowning child or guided someone to find a lost item in a stream. Small acts of kindness. Oreads, mountain nymphs, sometimes associated with echoes and caves as well. The famous Echo in myth was a nymph who fell in love with Narcissus, and after heartbreak, only her voice remained, repeating others' words. Though tragic, the echoing phenomenon in nature came to be explained as Echo's ghost or presence. But one can spin it gently. Maybe Echo is still alive in a way, playfully mimicking our calls to remind us we are not alone. If you call out in the mountains and hear your own voice back, imagine a cheerful Oread giving you a hollered greeting, like a mountain's "hello there," rather than emptiness. Oceanids and Nereids, sea nymphs. The 50 Nereids, daughters of Nereus, were specifically known to help sailors. Thetis, mother of Achilles, is among them, as is Galatea, etc. When storms threatened, sailors might pray to them. I can see how thinking the Nereids are dancing around our hull to keep it steady could comfort in heavy seas. At night, by the sea, phosphorescence or mysterious calm patches might be attributed to their presence. So, if you imagine them swirling under the waves, that can turn fear of deep water into fascination. It's their realm, and they're friendly as long as we respect Poseidon and them. Nymphs also correspond to places of beauty where people feel calm even today. a glen with a waterfall, a serene hill, a particular old tree. When you find such a place and feel instantly at ease, the Greeks would say, a nymph dwells there, and her aura is affecting you benignly. Perhaps certain local parks or nature spots you love have good vibes. In antiquity, they'd build a small shrine attributing it to nymphs. Many shrines to nymphs, nymphaea, existed in caves or by springs. They often served as restful retreats for individuals. Even Plato is said to have meditated in such a cave shrine outside Athens. In our restful journey, nymphs represent the world's minor but abundant sources of comfort. The rustle of foliage, babble of water, twinkle of stars. Star nymphs could be the Pleiades, etc., flicker of fireflies. In myth, they might flirt or joke or hide, but they rarely harmed unless deeply provoked. So think of them as a multitude of unseen caretakers, leaving little gifts: the cool dew, the fragrance of night-blooming flowers. The flower nymphs share their perfume. The soft glow of the moon magnolia or queen of night blossoms. Yep, likely tended by flower nymphs or one of the Hesperides evening nymphs associated with golden light. Dusk. In summary, if the Olympians are the big guiding lights, nymphs are the countless tea lights or fairy lights, making the path cozy. Under their watch, no forest is truly dark, and no stream truly silent. They fill the world's empty corners with friendship, so when falling asleep, if you feel the whisper of wind or ticking of rain, you might interpret that as nature's lullaby courtesy of nymphs. Perhaps you can even assign a nymph to guard your room, like believing each bedroom has a sort of household nymph or spirit, oikodaimon, that stands by your bedside. That concept existed, as did personal daemons, not demon in the later sense, but personal spirit guides. Socrates famously spoke of his inner daemon guiding him morally. That could well be thought of as some minor deity or nymph whispering counsel. So cluster these ideas. The room's hush is Hestia's comfort. The random outside noises are nymphs softly chatting, and any intuitive comfort you feel is maybe your personal guardian spirit, a friendly minor deity, patting your shoulder. Muses, inspirers of the mind's art and knowledge. If you've ever felt a sudden surge of creativity or had a tune pop into your head from nowhere, the Greeks would say, the muses touched you. The 9 muses are the daughters of Zeus and Mnemosyne, memory, and preside over the arts and sciences, each muse inspiring a different realm of creativity. Their sphere includes epic poetry, history, love poetry, music, tragedy, sacred song, dance, comedy, and astronomy. However, beyond specifics, they collectively represent the joy and clarity that comes with artistic or intellectual inspiration. Muses in a bedtime story context might sound too active. After all, creative thought is more a daytime affair. But the muses can also bring soothing artistic content to the mind that helps one relax. A gentle melody, Euterpe's domain, a recalled pleasant story, Calliope or Homer's domain, or even the pattern of star constellations, Urania, the muse of astronomy. Picture the muses as graceful young women, often found in Apollo's company, on Mount Helicon or Parnassus, dancing in a circle and singing harmoniously. The idea of 9 voices perfectly harmonized is itself calming. Think of an angelic choir or a gentle lullaby sung in round. In fact, one might imagine the distant hum of crickets at night as a faint echo of the muses' chorus, or the twinkling of stars as the visual music arranged by Uranus. The Muses also ease the burdens of mortals by entertaining and enlightening. In Hesiod's Theogony, the Muses are described as giving special gift to kings, the ability to speak soothingly and dispel cares. When a just king with muse-given eloquence addresses an angry crowd, Hesiod says, "They soothe the hearts and end strife." So, the Muses can literally calm conflict by injecting grace and wisdom into words. Now, on a personal level, when your mind is troubled at night with perhaps leftover stress or dull, repetitive thoughts, calling on the Muses might replace that static with something melodious, intellectually pleasing. For example, instead of worrying, you might recall lines of a favorite poem or lullaby, attributing that memory spark to the muse of memory and epic Calliope. Or you might start visualizing a mini performance in your head, gentle dancers, Terpsichore's realm, moving slowly, almost like counting sheep but more artistic. That could lull you. We often cope with falling asleep by counting, humming, or mentally reciting lyrics, all influenced by the concept that certain rhythms and patterns relax us. That's basically the Muses at work through our mind, giving it calming, structured content so it doesn't spiral anxiously. We can also see the Muses as comforters. There's a mythic motif of them comforting a sorrowful poet or hero by singing to ease their pain. The poet Orpheus had a muse mother, Calliope, and after his tragic death, the Muses collected the fragments of his lyre and voice and set them among the stars. Plus, they kept singing his songs so his memory lived. That's tender. The Muses mourn a friend or devotee by immortalizing his art and giving him an honored remembrance. So if one is grieving or stressed, the Muses might similarly soothe by turning pain into art. For example, journaling, Clio, might help history writing or memory sorting, or humming, a sad tune which paradoxically heals. Melpomene, muse of tragedy, could guide that. They transform personal turmoil into expressions that relieve. In a simpler sense, lullabies themselves are the Muses' gift. Mothers and nurses in antiquity invoked the muse of sacred song, polyhymnia, maybe, or euterpe for music, when lulling children. Even today, singing a baby to sleep is channeling some primal muse energy. So one might imagine, for an adult difficulty sleeping, that the Muses are quietly singing over you. Maybe you don't audibly hear it, but you can imagine their presence. 9 sisters around your bed, humming a soft nocturne, each adding a delicate layer. Maybe one hums low harmony, one high, one whispers comforting words, like sleep, sleep. One mimics a soothing flute on syllables. It's a celestial, a cappella that no anxiety can resist. Additionally, Urania, muse of astronomy, encourages looking at the night sky and feeling wonder, not fear. Many find stargazing relaxing. It puts things in perspective, thinking of constellations as named stories, Andromeda, Orion, etc. That's the muse, gently storytelling via the stars, turning what could be an overwhelming infinite blackness into a friendly map of pictures and tales. During the day, we might be too busy to indulge the Muses, but at night, when the world is quiet, they might tiptoe in if invited. Some people get creative ideas in that hypnagogic state. That's a gift of the Muses too. If not now actionable, you can mentally say, "Thank you, I'll note it, but let's enact it tomorrow." And sometimes, just knowing your mind is benevolently active can be reassuring. rather than insomnia causing. We could also recall that the English word amuse literally is amuse, to be in the presence of muses, hence experiencing something enjoyable. So, to amuse oneself to sleep with pleasant fantasies or memories is literally to call on muses. If one suffers nightmares, perhaps invoking the muse of comedy, Thalia, could help lighten the tone of dreams, giving them absurdly happy twists, like a frightening monster in a dream suddenly slipping on a banana peel. That's Thalia sneaking in with slapstick to jolt the nightmare into silliness, thus waking you up, maybe laughing instead of screaming. Thus, the muses represent the mind's ability to comfort itself through creativity and beauty. They externalize that concept into friendly entities one can imagine in the room or in one's head, like a personal choir or support group, ensuring that the content of your mental theatre is soothing. They were also considered goddesses of meditation and pleasurable mental absorption. In a word, they bring music to silence, filling it with pattern and meaning. The restful effect of soft music is direct. The restful effect of poetry or repeated prayer, polyhymnia, is another. It's no coincidence many pray or recite something at bedtime. So, in summary for bedtime, consider saying a small invocation. Dear Muses 9, bless my rest with dreams divine. Let song and story guard me till morning. Envision maybe 9 gentle lights or 9 robed figures around you, imparting a light, invisible blanket of artistic peace. They might weave your dreams as well. Perhaps they'll make your dreams like lovely narratives or harmless absurdist plays, so you wake either entertained or at least not disturbed. In a broad sense, the muses ensure that the human mind doesn't stagnate. Even in sleep, they might lead you through creative processing of your day's events. Hence some dreams solve problems or inspire. That way, you can look forward to sleeping as a time when the muses will do positive housekeeping in your psyche. Concluding the muses, they are benevolent, dream weavers, and guardians of the subconscious artistry. With them present, your inner world at night is like a safe, magical theatre where nothing can truly harm you. It's all performance that can ultimately be admired, or at least learned from, not feared. The Fates, Moirai, weavers of destiny and tranquil acceptance. In Greek lore, even the gods bowed to the Fates, known as the Moirai, 3 ancient sisters who spun, measured, and cut the thread of each life. Their names are Clotho, the spinner, Lachesis, the allotter, who measures out the length, and Atropos, the inflexible, who cuts the thread at life's end. At first glance, they may seem grim. Indeed, they are sometimes depicted as stern old women. But there is a profound comfort in the concept of fate, properly understood. The fates represent order and inevitability in the cosmos. Rather than seeing them as malicious, the Greeks generally saw them as just and impartial. They give each being their rightful portion of life's experiences. Knowing that a wise force is handling the big picture of your life can be oddly comforting, because it suggests things happen for a reason, or at least in a pattern, not randomly. With that trust, one could release worry. What will be, and the fates are neither cruel nor kind. Specifically, they simply ensure the natural course. In a bedtime context, reflecting on the fates might help one accept the day's events. It was meant to be good or bad. Now it's done. And relinquish anxiety about tomorrow. The length of my thread is fixed. Worrying won't change that. So better to rest and face what comes refreshed. Some myths personify fate singularly or abstractly, but often these three appear to do things like attend births, spinning a child's life thread at birth. There's a charming, albeit not widely known custom. In some rural Greek areas historically, 3 women, or 3 small girls, might be invited to a newborn's home to play the role of the fates, offering blessings for the child's future. This was like hacking the myth. They symbolically ingratiate the fates to give a good fate. We can analogously imagine the fates kindly smiling on us as we sleep, pleased if we cooperated with our destiny that day. The thread metaphor has a nice bedtime resonance. Sleep itself can be seen as a temporary pause in the weaving. Clotho stops spinning for the night. Lachesis stops measuring. And Atropos is not to act until it's time. So nighttime, when not much externally happens, is like your life's tapestry being put gently on the loom's peg to wait for morning. The fates, having all eternity, are patient. They might even be humming an ancient tune as they sit by the idle loom, watching over you so nothing tries to cut or tangle your thread prematurely. Some comfort can come from thinking, what's done is done, the cut piece is behind, and the future is beyond immediate reach, the unspun ahead. So I exist now on the measured portion, which at this moment is to rest. It's almost Zen-like acceptance. At this moment, the fates decree sleep for me, since nighttime came. Resisting them is silly. Better to align with their cosmic plan by surrendering to slumber. Stories. Not many myths have the repast, fates as main characters, but one lovely scene. At the end of the Trojan War, in Euripides' play, The Trojan Women, as the city falls, the Greek victor's wife asks why such suffering had to happen. The chorus, which can be seen as echoing fate's perspective, says we cannot see the weaving's whole pattern. Only the gods, fates, can. Hidden in that tragedy is the eventual rise of Rome, via Aeneas escaping. The solace. From utter ruin, fate might have a thread of future good foundation, of new empire. So even in personal disasters, trusting fate means believing something meaningful will eventually come out of it, often beyond our foresight. That thought can ease immediate pain. Also, in myth, Zeus weighs mortal fates on scales at times, like measuring which side of a battle will lose by heavier death fate. But the final decision was the fates'. Not even Zeus overturns them in older myths, though some later folklore implies he can. Originally, even he respected them. This implies there's a higher natural law. Again, restful because it's consistent and not whimsical. Perhaps think of fates as akin to gravity or the laws of nature. Consistent forces. We trust the sun to rise. Maybe trust that joys and sorrows have their measured time too. For everyday comfort, the fates as kind spinners might mend the torn threads of your day's stress in the quiet of night, patching up holes in your spirit's fabric. Or, if a day was overwhelmingly great, maybe they gently weave that memory into your soul's tapestry permanently. I recall a superstition. Talking about someone's death possibility at night might tempt fate. So some ancients avoided negative speech in darkness. They'd rather pray to the fates for longevity. For example, "May the fates allot you many years," was a toast. As we sleep, we could sort of say, "Dear Clotho, keep spinning my thread nice and long. Lachesis, I hope there's much left in the measure. Atropos, no, need for your scissors tonight. Please rest." It's half whimsical, half sincere, a way of relinquishing fear of death at night by politely appealing to these ultimate deciders. One more gentle image. Often the fates are pictured as old grandmothers. Imagine 3 warm, loving grandmothers in rocking chairs around the fireplace. Hestia's presence too, knitting a big blanket, the world's fate tapestry. Slowly, one knits, spins the yarn. One counts rows, measures length. One snips off loose ends, cuts, unwanted threads. They murmur lullabies or gossip quietly. You, as a child, metaphorically lie on a small bed nearby, and one fate gets up now and then to tuck your blanket or stroke your hair with a wrinkled hand. They truly mean you no harm. They love all their children, whose lives they handle, even if sometimes their duty requires hard choices, but not tonight. Thus, fate is not an enemy, but an inevitability, best treated as a friend. That mentality can remove fear of the unknown. In summary, for sleep, where day involves striving and altering things, exercising free will, which coexists with fate in Greek thought, night is a time to yield to fate's flow, trusting it's out of your hands for now. The fates, as cosmic caretakers, will keep the world running and your life threads safe till dawn. You can lay down burdens, because those are ultimately in the hands of these wise old weavers. Personified concepts: Nike, victory, Tyche, fortune, hypnos, sleep, and more as friendly forces. The Greeks had a rich habit of personifying nearly every abstract idea as a deity or spirit. This means aspects of life like victory, luck, sleep, death, fear, hope, etc. were not mere abstractions but almost characters one could relate to or appeal to. For a person seeking comfort, these personified concepts can be invoked to harness a psychological effect. Let's touch a few relevant ones in a soothing manner. Nike, the goddess of victory. Nike is envisioned as a winged maiden flying around battlefields, granting success to the favored side. Now, in peaceful applications, Nike can symbolize personal triumphs, even small ones, like overcoming the day's challenges. Perhaps as you lie in bed, you might recall something you did well today, even if minor, like finishing a chore or being kind to someone. That's Nike perched on your shoulder momentarily in those moments. It's nice to sleep feeling, I had some victories today and more will come. Nike's presence assures that challenges can be overcome. Even the challenge of falling asleep. You can half smile imagining Nike will declare you victorious when you wake up having gotten good rest. Nike is often depicted in art as offering a wreath to the victor or hovering to crown someone. She often accompanies Zeus or Athena in mythic depictions. At night, we can reinterpret that. Perhaps Nike in dreams comes to crown you for something you did. That could manifest as a positive dream where you win a prize or praise, which leaves a pleasant afterglow upon waking. If you consciously set that up, I call on Nike to grant me feelings of accomplishment. It might help self-esteem. Tyche, the goddess of fortune. Luck. Tyche is basically Lady Luck. In art, she might hold a cornucopia, horn of plenty, spilling riches, and sometimes a rudder, steering life unpredictably, or she stands on a wheel, indicating the ups and downs of chance. How can that comfort? Well, Tyche reminds us that luck can change for the better at any moment. If today was bad, tomorrow could randomly be better. The wheel turns. The idea to sleep on it aligns. After a down day, wheel's low point. By morning, things might turn around slightly. Invoking Tyche, one might think, goddess of chance, spin me some good luck come sunrise. It's a hopeful attitude, that even in gloom, a lucky break might be around the corner, thus relieving some dread. Interestingly, cities often worship Tyche as a protectress, as if acknowledging chance events we can't control need a deity's guidance. Surrendering to Tyche at night could ease control issues, a way of saying I let go and trust the universe, Tyche, to handle what I cannot write. Now, Hypnos, the god of sleep. This is directly relevant. Hypnos is literally sleep personified. The Greeks imagined him as a gentle winged spirit or a quiet young man, often with his twin brother Thanatos, death nearby. Though sleep was kindly and temporary, death permanent. The association suggests sleep is a little death, but importantly, controlled by a benevolent minor god, not to be feared. Hypnos lived in a dark cave on an island, surrounded by poppies and Lethes waters, forgetfulness, a tranquil environment. Visiting him was restorative. It's very apt to pray to Hypnos at bedtime. Essentially, what we do when we say, I hope I fall asleep quickly. The Greeks might offer a few words, or even a libation of milk or poppy extract to Hypnos, asking him to fold them in his arms. In myth, Hypnos even tricked Zeus to help Hera at one point, lulling the king of gods into slumber. As alluded earlier, if sleep can conquer Zeus, no wonder we mortals stand no chance resisting when he truly comes. That's comforting if you have insomnia. Eventually, Hypnos will gently overpower your wakefulness, given enough relaxation. Perhaps invite him. Picture sleep as a diffused figure of shadow, arriving to wrap you in a soft cloak, or sprinkle a few magical drops in your eyes. The Romans later called him somnus root of somnolent, but often art shows sleep as a child, carrying a bouquet of poppies, or a horn from which he pours sleep-inducing vapors, or as a sandman sprinkling sand, an evolution of Hypnos's imagery, all friendly. Instead of viewing sleep as losing conscious control, scary for some, see sleep as an embrace by a calm deity. Even nightmares can be pacified by asking Hypnos and his mother Nyx, night, for protection. Nyx, goddess of night. Nyx is seldom a personal goddess in cult. People didn't pray to night much, but in myth she's powerful. Even Zeus stands in awe of Nyx. She is mother of Hypnos. Imagining night as a goddess rather than emptiness can make darkness less intimidating. You might think Nyx spreads her starry cloak over the world, giving repose. Nyx in myth is actually benign. Yes, she mothered some dark spirits like Eris, strife, and the fates in some stories, but she herself is more like a cosmic backdrop. If you go outside at night and feel a hush, that's Nyx's quiet presence. If anything, you could whisper anxieties to Nyx, as if confiding in a quiet mother. She won't respond verbally, but she might show you a sign, like a shooting star, or a sudden breeze, making leaves rustle comfortingly, that she heard. Many ancients did think night a good time for introspection and petition of these more abstract deities. Eros, love, and Philotes, friendship. It might be odd to call on love at night outside romantic contexts, but self-love or general love feelings certainly help one feel content. Eros, in early myth, is a primordial being. Hesiod has him alongside Chaos and Gaia at creation, a fundamental force. Later, he's the playful Cupid figure. We can use both aspects. Primordial Eros might be felt as the fundamental warmth or good feeling in your heart that can quell fear. Some meditations say, breathe in love, breathe out fear. The Cupid Eros might lighten dreams with a dash of affection or desire, or if lonely, maybe imagine gentle Eros hugging you. There's also a goddess Philotes, lesser known, personifying affection and friendship, daughter of Nyx. She stands for the comfort of social bonds, thinking of friends and loved ones as you drift off. That's like invoking Philotes to wrap you in the sense that you are loved, and not alone, even if physically alone. This naturally soothes. Countless people count those they love, or who love them as a sheep-counting method, implicitly trusting love deity vibes to guard them. Acte, silence. One more obscure personification. The Romans personified silence as goddess Angerona, or the Greeks, sometimes as Hesychia. In a restful state, you may appreciate silence as an actual entity, the blessed, quiet, that fosters sleep. Mentally thanking silence or beseeching for quiet if there's noise, like Angerona, muzzle that barking dog, please, can feel like you have an ally working on it beyond earplugs. Finally, Oneiros and the Oneiroi, dreams, asterisk, asterisk. The Greeks pluralized dreams as spirits, children of night as well. In myth, dreams pass through either gates of horn, true, divine dreams, or gates of ivory, false dreams. Perhaps one could invoke Morpheus, one of the Oneiroi, who shapes dreams, to send only pleasant or useful dreams. In summation, the Greek personifications turn abstract fears or hopes into characters you can dialogue with or envision. If fear arises, recall Phobos is just a minor bratty god, son of Ares. Tell him off, or see Apollo chasing him away. If despair creeps, imagine Elpis, hope, who remained in Pandora's jar, fluttering about as a tiny fairy saying, "I'm still here." If anger is an issue, visualize Lyssa, frenzy, leaving your body as a dark smoke, and Sieg, silence, filling you like cool water. It's psychological play, but for many, it works similarly to modern guided imagery or CBT techniques. It externalizes the emotion, giving you more control to banish or transform it. Thus, with all these personified helpers, be it victory, fortune, sleep, night, love, friendship, silence, hope, or others, the Greek pantheon created a toolkit for emotional and mental comfort. In a sense, whatever you need at bedtime, there's a friend for that. Just as kids might have imaginary friends to feel safe, adults can borrow these ancient imaginary friends, ennobled by myth and time. Through these glimpses of nymphs, muses, fates, and personifications, we see an intimate portrait of how the Greeks found solace in a world alive with spirit. For every rustle in the dark, a benign cause. For every fear, a counteracting hope or deity to lean on. As we continue our tranquil narrative, we carry along this newfound companionship of minor guardians and concepts turned friends, knowing that not only mighty Zeus or Athena watch us, but also countless gentle nymphs and ideas like sleep and love personified attend to our well-being. In the ancient Greek imagination, one was never alone in the dark or in doubt, a comforting thought we might embrace as we venture next into stories of love, nature, and transformation, all under the caring watch of these ever-present smaller divinities. Chapter 5: Myths of Love, Creation, Nature, and Transformation. Gentle Tales to Dream. By Mythology is rich with tender and enchanting stories that speak to the heart. Tales of love that endures, of the world's creation told with wonder, of humans transformed into stars or flowers, so their memory lives on. Retelling some of these myths in a calm and poetic manner can soothe the mind, as if listening to ancient fairy tales by a fireside. Let us wander through a few such beloved myths, letting their strange beauty and gentle lessons guide us toward a peaceful mindset. The story of Eros and Psyche, love's trials and the promise of joy. Once upon a dream, as the Greek storytellers might begin, there lived a mortal princess, so kind and lovely that even Aphrodite took notice. Her name was Psyche, which means soul or breath of life. Psyche was admired by all for her grace, but this stirred envy in Aphrodite, who decided to teach the girl a lesson. She sent her son Eros, Cupid, the god of love, to make Psyche fall in love with something foolish by pricking her with one of his golden arrows. But as Eros beheld Psyche sleeping, he was so struck by her innocent beauty that he clumsily pricked himself instead. Thus, Eros fell deeply in love with a mortal, a most unexpected turn for the god of love. At Aphrodite's urging, Psyche's family, fearing some curse, left her atop a mountain, believing she was destined to marry a fearsome creature. In truth, the west wind Zephyrus gently lifted Psyche and bore her to a secret palace. There, in a softly lit chamber, Psyche met her new husband, invisible in the darkness, speaking to her in a tender, enchanting voice. This was Eros, but he did not reveal his identity. He had asked Zephyrus and the night to help hide him, fearing that if Psyche knew a god loved her, it would complicate things. And indeed, if Aphrodite found out, it'd cause trouble. So each night, he came to her unseen, and they shared whispers and laughter in the gentle dark. Psyche found her mysterious husband kind and gentle. She fell in love with his soul without yet seeing his face. There was but one condition. Eros, not named to her, but known as the lover or husband, told Psyche she must never try to see him in light. Psyche agreed. For a time, all day, she roamed a magical palace with invisible servants and heard Eros's distant harp playing. At night, they were together in a love so sweet that all her fears faded away. However, Psyche's human curiosity grew. Her jealous sisters visited and planted seeds of doubt. Who is this husband of yours? Why won't he show himself? Perhaps he is a monster. Their words gnawed at Psyche. So one night, after Eros fell asleep beside her, Psyche lit an oil lamp and held it up to glimpse his form. What she saw banished all fear. Before her lay not a monster but the most beautiful of gods, Eros himself, with golden curls and gentle wings on his shoulders. Overwhelmed by awe and love, Psyche trembled, and a drop of hot oil from her lamp fell upon Eros's shoulder. He awoke with a start, feeling the burn. Their eyes met. At last, love face to face, but sorrow quickly followed. Eros, pained by both the burn and her betrayal of trust, fled out the window, saying now all might be lost between them. Psyche, heartbroken, wandered in search of her lost love. She realized the misguidance of her doubt and was determined to prove herself and win him back. What follows is a series of gentle trials, often characteristic of fairy tales. Psyche approached Aphrodite herself, who of course was displeased with her, and begged to serve some penance to show her devotion and possibly reunite with Eros. Aphrodite set seemingly impossible tasks for Psyche, sought a huge, mixed pile of grains by dawn. Imagine thousands of barley, wheat, millet kernels all heaped together. Fetch golden wool from fierce rams. fill a crystal goblet from the treacherous black waters of the river Styx, and finally descend to the underworld and bring back a box containing a bit of Persephone's beauty for Aphrodite. These tasks were symbolically the labors of the soul, Psyche, to prove worthiness for love. In each trial, Psyche surprisingly found help. As she despaired before the mountain of grain, tiny ants, little workers of Demeter, perhaps sent by an earth deity, took pity and sorted the grains for her, grain by grain, through the night. What a comforting image! The smallest of creatures helping with an overwhelming task, showing that no one is ever truly without aid if they evoke compassion. Next, at the riverbank, where golden-fleeced rams grazed creatures that could gore anyone who approached, a green reed by the water spoke softly to Psyche, advising her to wait until noontide when the rams rested in the shade, then gather wool from branches they'd rubbed against, thus obtaining the fleece without danger. Nature itself guided her gently. To fill the goblet from Styx's waterfall, inaccessible between high rocks, Zeus's eagle appeared, took the goblet from her and filled it, as if recognizing in Psyche someone worthy of divine assistance. Finally, entering Hades, Psyche found the resolve to complete the journey. She even resisted temptations like helping someone on the road advice, was she must stay focused in underworld, or risk never leaving, or opening the box of Persephone's beauty for herself. Actually, she did falter at the end. Curiosity overcame her again, and she peeked into the box, which caused her to fall into a death-like sleep. But this served as the final catalyst. At that moment, Eros, who had been recuperating from his burn and longing for Psyche, flew to her side. He gently wiped the sleep from her eyes and returned it to the box, then woke her with a delicate prick of his arrow, or perhaps a kiss. Versions vary. Restored, Psyche's trials were over. Eros carried Psyche to Olympus. There, Psyche presented the box to Aphrodite as required, and Eros presented Psyche to Zeus, boldly asking that their love be honored. Zeus, touched by their dedication, and perhaps quietly amused at how love had bested even Aphrodite's plans, granted Psyche immortality, giving her a sip of ambrosia. The other gods welcomed her kindly, even Aphrodite reconciled. For with Psyche made immortal, the couple's union posed no slight on Aphrodite's own purview. Thus, Psyche and Eros were joyfully reunited, never to be parted. The soul, Psyche, and love, Eros, achieved eternal bliss after all hardships. In a final happy note, the myth says they had a daughter named Voluptas, pleasure. Telling this myth in our hushed bedtime context, several comforting themes emerge. True love, even if hidden for a time, ultimately became known and recognized. Doubts and curiosity might strain trust, but sincere effort and courage can mend it. Throughout Psyche's lonely quest, nature, the ants, the reed, small mercies, the eagle, a tower that gave directions in underworld, and her own perseverance helped her succeed. It's encouraging. If you feel separated from what you love, metaphorically, perhaps a goal or a sense of peace, the universe might quietly assist if you don't give up. And finally, the union of Psyche and Eros is often interpreted broadly: the soul fulfilled by love, or the Psyche mind, soul, finding ultimate happiness, symbolized by their child, pleasure. It's a deeply happy ending. Out of trials comes joy beyond mortal measure. All that heartbreak was not in vain, but made Psyche worthy of divine love and joy everlasting. For someone drifting to sleep on a hard day, this tale whispers, "Take heart, your psyche might be undergoing trials, but love awaits you at the end of them. Believe in subtle help along the way. Believe that even the highest powers want your soul and love to unite in contentment." We can fall asleep, imagining that we too drink a little ambrosia of contentment, as did Psyche, and that all wounds between our heart and mind are healed with love's balm. Baucis and Philemon, the lovers who became trees. Another heartwarming myth is that of Baucis and Philemon, an old married couple known for their hospitality and devotion. This gentle tale comes down from Ovid, a Roman poet, but clearly inspired by Greek ethos of xenia, hospitality to strangers, and piety. Zeus and Hermes, the story goes, once traveled in disguise through a certain region, testing human kindness. They knocked on many doors, but were rejected by the rich and middling alike. No one wanted to welcome two poor-looking travelers into their home that night. Finally, at the edge of town on a low hill, they came to a humble cottage with a thatched roof and crumbling chimney. Here lived Philemon and his wife Baucis, peasants who had been married for many decades. Though they were as poor as anyone, their hearth always warmly glowed for guests. When the weary strangers arrived, Baucis and Philemon sprang up to greet them and invite them inside. Apologizing that they had little to offer, they set their only goose to roast, and when the goose evaded capture out of fear, even hid behind Zeus's legs, the couple gently shooed it out of hiding. Zeus quietly signaled to spare it, content with simpler fare. Instead, Baucis gathered what garden vegetables they had and cooked a hearty soup. Philemon fetched a bit of wine, more diluted than the wealthy drink, but still given generously. They pulled their rough bench near the fire for the guests, and with smiling faces served them, feeling honored to share their home. As the meal went on, something wondrous happened. No matter how much the guests ate and drank, the pot remained full, and the wine bowl never emptied. Baucis and Philemon, though simple, noticed this miracle. In hushed awe, they realized their guests were likely gods in disguise. How glad they were that they hadn't turned anyone away. They apologized their food was so plain, and, in whispered consultation, offered to kill their prized goose, after all, to properly feast the guests. But Zeus revealed himself then, assuring them no sacrifice was needed. The hospitality and love they'd shown was more pleasing to the gods than any burnt offering. He took them outside and told them to climb the hill with him and Hermes, not looking back until they reached the top. Confused but obedient, the old couple linked arms and climbed with surprising vigor. When they reached the summit and turned, they saw below that the entire town was flooded. All the inhospitable houses and people were gone, swept away in a divine flood similar to biblical or other flood myths. A purge of impiety. Only their little cottage remained. As they stared, it was transformed. The thatch turned to gold tiles, the poor walls to white marble, their simple columns to ornate pillars. Zeus had made their home a temple. Philemon and Baucis fell to their knees, not in fear, but in reverence and gratitude. Zeus then asked what divine reward they'd wish. They consulted one another briefly and answered that they wished to be priests, guardians of Zeus's temple, to live and serve the gods there for the rest of their days. And one more thing, Baucis added softly, that they might depart life at the same moment, for neither could bear to live without the other. Zeus kindly granted these wishes. So Philemon and Baucis became keepers of the temple, and for years they tended the altar, offered travelers food and rest beneath its roof, just as they had done before, but now, with abundance. And when they reached a very old age, one day standing outside, recalling their strange, blessed life, they began to transform. Slowly, they sprouted bark and leaves. Realizing the end was near, they had just enough time to bid each other a final loving farewell before they turned fully into two trees, an oak and a linden, intertwining branches and roots. The locals admired these trees, standing together at the temple entrance, and the gods ordained that they remain there always, a living symbol of rewarded goodness and faithful love. Travelers who passed by would pause and whisper a prayer under those rustling leaves, because it felt as if the kindly spirits of Baucis and Philemon still offered welcome shade and comfort to any who needed it. This story is extremely comforting. It tells that hospitality, kindness to strangers, is noticed and rewarded by the divine, that humility and contentedness can elevate even the lowliest life to something sacred, and above all, that true love is honored. Baucis and Philemon not only lived long together, but also died, or rather transformed together, so neither ever mourned the other. Instead of grief, their end was a sort of apotheosis, gentle and natural, turning into trees rather than vanishing or something violent. They literally became part of the beautiful landscape, growing side by side, basically eternal, as far as humans reckon oak and linden can live many hundreds of years. In a bedtime reflection, one might think, acts of kindness I have done, even if small, are meaningful and perhaps noticed by higher powers. Perhaps in dreams tonight, those good deeds will return as kindly visitors or restful satisfaction. Also, Baucis and Philemon's unity can reassure those in love or friendship that bonds continue beyond what we normally conceive. They became trees, a metaphor perhaps, that love takes root and continues to live in new forms. If someone is sleeping alone, missing a spouse or friend, the image of two trees growing from one trunk might gently suggest that no separation is absolute. Spiritually, you remain intertwined. That can ease loneliness, and for anxiety about death or change, their transformation shows not to fear. Something gentle can come, a blending into nature, an enduring presence. We can also glean that the gods, or fate, are not arbitrary. Those villagers who were cruel lost their homes. The one-kind couple saw their home turn to a temple. It's a moral universe which, though maybe not immediately, eventually rights wrongs and repays good. That cosmic justice is a comforting idea when daily news and life often seem unfair. Their wish to die together resonates as well. It's often a worry to lose loved ones or be left behind. The myth assures symbolically that those truly unified in love might depart the world in such a way that neither suffers alone. In any case, they didn't suffer. They felt a calm coming of the transformation, maybe like falling asleep, 1 minute chatting, the next gently becoming trees. That's a lovely, painless notion of passing. One could imagine in a dream visiting that temple and sitting under those two trees, feeling the presence of Baucis and Philemon as a warm, hospitable vibe. Maybe the leaves whisper lullabies or encouragement. Be kind. Trust love. Their story encourages empathy since hidden gods might be in anyone. Treat all kindly and hope if we live well. We needn't fear what comes after. Those feelings definitely help one sleep contentedly. Summing up, the story of Baucis and Philemon is like a folktale that leaves you with a smile and perhaps a tear of joy. It assures that virtue and love have their rewards, perhaps perhaps not in immediate riches, but in cherished, meaningful life and gentle exit. So, lying in bed, one can recall their simple, happy evening of hosting gods unawares. The glow of hearth on poor cottage walls. Two old folks delighted to share what little they have, turning that moment into a divine feast thanks to their open hearts. Imagining that scene can fill one's own heart with a warm glow, a recipe for sweet dreams. Demeter and Persephone, a mother's love and the cycle of the seasons. We touched on this myth earlier while honoring Demeter, but let's revisit Demeter and Persephone as a narrative in a lullaby tone, focusing on its reassuring aspects, the turning of seasons, and the promise that even after the cold and dark, warmth and life return. Persephone, the beloved daughter of Demeter, was a bright young goddess of spring, often called Kore, maiden. One day, as she gathered flowers in a meadow, the earth opened, and Hades, lord of the underworld, swept her into his chariot and down beneath the earth. The world grew quiet and still in shock. Persephone vanished so quickly that none of her companions could intervene. Only the sun saw what happened, and he held his silence for fear of Hades. When Demeter discovered Persephone missing, her grief was profound. She wandered the world with a torch, day and night, searching and calling Persephone's name. In her sorrow, she neglected her duties. Plants wilted, fields grew barren. It was as if the whole earth mourned with the mother of harvest. This was the first winter, a season of no growth, born of Demeter's heartbreak. At last, after 9 days, Hecate, goddess of crossroads and moonlight, guided Demeter to the sun, who revealed the truth. Hades had taken Persephone to be his queen. Furious and anguished, Demeter refused to let the earth produce a single blade of green until her daughter was returned. Famine spread. Humans and animals starved. The cry of hungry mortals reached Olympus, and Zeus realized the world would perish without intervention. Zeus sent Hermes to Hades with a message. Persephone must come back, or Zeus would have to take dire actions. Hades, who actually loved Persephone and treated her kindly aside from the abduction, agreed to let her go, but not before he offered her a parting gift, a few pomegranate seeds. Persephone, unaware of the underworld's rule that tasting its food binds one to it, ate 6 seeds, some say fewer, some more. Soon Hermes arrived, leading Persephone upward. The reunion of Demeter and Persephone on the plain of Eleusis was one of indescribable joy. Demeter rushed to embrace her daughter, and as she wept tears of happiness, the ground beneath them burst into bloom. Grasses and flowers sprang up wherever they stepped. Birds began singing again. The whole world breathed a sigh of relief and delight as spring returned, courtesy of Demeter's joy. Yet their time together was not to be eternal. Because Persephone had eaten those seeds of the underworld, she was claimed by Hades for part of each year. Zeus, acting as mediator, determined that for each seed consumed, Persephone would spend 1 month below. So, of 12 months, Persephone would spend roughly 6 with Hades as queen of the underworld, and 6 above with her mother. The ratio varies in tellings, but 6 is common. Demeter had to accept this compromise. Each year, when Persephone leaves for the underworld, Demeter's grief returns. She withdraws her nurturing touch, and autumn's leaves fall. Winter's cold comes. The world seemingly dies again. But each year, the moment, Persephone is back in Demeter's arms. Life springs anew. Green shoots, vibrant blossoms, abundant crops, all signal the mother and maiden's reunion. And so, through the cycle of the seasons, the deep bond of Demeter and Persephone is commemorated in nature. Spring and summer for their happiness together, fall and winter for their aching separation. It's a poignant myth, but comforting in its resolution. Their separation is not permanent. In fact, it brings about a meaningful cycle that sustains the world. The story teaches that sorrow and joy each have their season, and one follows the other as day follows night. No matter how bleak things get, winter, figuratively or literally, warmth and growth will return. Spring. For someone listening as they fall asleep, this myth can provide solace in times of personal winter. If you are going through a loss or loneliness, Demeter's winter, hearing that even the great goddess of grain had to endure loss but regained her loved one, and her happiness on a cyclic schedule, can give hope that your sadness, too, may blossom into something positive in time. Perhaps you lost something, a job, a relationship, and feel barren, Demeter's plight. But maybe in time, like Persephone's return, a new opportunity or reconciliation will occur, and you'll feel alive again. Even the idea that Persephone finds some contentment in the underworld as its respected queen besides Hades, who was not a cruel husband to her by mythic accounts, and returns to her mother mature and intact, suggests that what we dread might not be wholly bad in actuality. A sleep thought: if winter of soul is upon me, can I find something quietly good in it? Like Persephone found some respect down below, and meanwhile trust that spring of spirit will follow. Additionally, this myth led to the Eleusinian mysteries, sacred rituals that promised initiates comfort about the afterlife and a sense of renewal. That story assured them that death, symbolized by winter, Persephone in Hades, was not the end. There was a form of rebirth, or a happier destiny. Spring, Persephone rises. For an ancient person, that gave great comfort. For us, if we contemplate mortality at night, common fear in the dark, the myth metaphorically assures that death is an intermediate phase, and something spring, rebirth, reunion comes beyond it. Many find comfort in any narrative that death is not final, or that loved ones separated eventually reunite. Demeter and Persephone are an embodiment of that yearning and its fulfillment annually. The imagery of Persephone's ascent is powerful. Imagine darkness for months, then a small sprout breaking ground, then Persephone stepping into the sunlight, maybe escorted by Hermes. She and Demeter embrace, laughing and crying tears that soak the earth, and incidentally, water seeds. Spring feels like that in real life too. After a long winter, that first truly warm day is emotional. The myth encapsulates that feeling and assures its repetition. It's sort of a lullaby the earth sings to itself. I will survive winter. I will prosper in summer. Thus, one could fall asleep under winter blankets with a small smile, knowing Persephone is up above now or soon will be, meaning no winter lasts forever, literal or metaphorical. The mother-daughter love also can comfort family bonds. If sleeping apart from family or missing someone dear, think of Demeter and Persephone's moment of meeting. How sweet that was. One day, you might have a sweet meeting in life, or even in some beyond, with those you love who are absent. That can ease nighttime heartache. In the simplest emotional terms, it's okay to mourn. Demeter did, and the world empathized. But don't lose faith. Your spring will return, bringing back what you love or bringing new life to cherish, just as Persephone returned each year. As the myth gave name to the seasons, one can plan, now is my emotional winter. I will be gentle with myself, hibernate a bit, but soon I'll allow spring feelings again. That mindset fosters acceptance rather than fretful fighting of sadness, making it easier to rest. To incorporate into a bedtime reverie, one might picture the world outside lightly snows, Demeter's sorrow, but under the soil in secret, bulbs and seeds, the hope of Persephone, are just waiting. Under your garden, maybe daffodils, Persephone's symbol, are sleeping but intact, ready. Then think of the last spring you experienced, the scent of blossoms, soft rain, first picnic, that will come back as reliably as Persephone does. If you sleep now in cold, you'll wake closer to warm times. Wrap up this gentle myth with the image of Demeter tucking Persephone in bed after her long journey. Perhaps mother and daughter safe together for the night, a lamp flickering golden like the Eleusinian torches. They tell each other softly about all that happened while apart, but now they can rest, arms around one another, Demeter humming a lullaby that blends with rustling spring leaves outside. That mental tableau can be exceedingly comforting to anyone feeling a bit lost. You are, in a sense, both mother and child in yourself. One part of you is the comforter, the other the comforted. The myth externalizes it, showing how to mother one's soul through grief until joy returns. These myths, Eros and Psyche, Baucis and Philemon, Demeter and Persephone, highlight love, fidelity, hospitality, cycles of loss and return, all presented with tender outcomes. Hearing them or recalling them at bedtime not only distracts from daily worries, but also feeds the mind hopeful, kindly images and morals. We have many other gentle myths we could recall, like Orpheus and Eurydice. Though tragic in end, their love and Orpheus's music soften it. Or Pygmalion, an artist's love bringing a statue to life, signifying hopes realized. Or the story of how the nightingale got its song from Philomela's tragic tale, turned into melodious consolation. Each has sorrow, yet nearly all have transformation into something enduringly beautiful, like people into stars, or birds, or trees, rather than simply dying. This idea that suffering might be transmuted through divine alchemy into beauty is a deeply consoling thought carried by Greek myth. As we drift off with these stories in our heart, it's akin to leaving a lamp lit in a dark room. The tales themselves are tiny lights, guiding us through the night, as they guided ancients through the metaphorical nights of life. Feel the presence of these mythic figures as kindly archetypes around you. Loving Eros and Psyche watch over couples. Venerable Baucis and Philemon bless any home you sleep in. Demeter and Persephone ensure the night's darkness will end in dawn. With such a congregation of compassion, we can surrender to sleep feeling cradled by collective human hope and divine care. Chapter 6. Gentle retellings of heroic journeys. Heracles, Perseus, Orpheus, and others. Tread softly. Even tales of heroes and adventurers, often filled with battles and dangers, can be retold in a calm, contemplative manner that emphasizes perseverance, cleverness, and eventual peace. The trick is to focus on the humanity and resolution rather than the conflict. Let's revisit a few famous Greek hero myths, those of Heracles, Perseus, Orpheus, and perhaps Odysseus or Theseus, but with an eye toward their quieter lessons and happy conclusions. turning them into inspiring bedside stories rather than heart-pounding epics. Heracles, a hero's labors and his gentle reward on Olympus. Hercules, to the Romans, is renowned as the strongest hero, but beneath the big deeds lies a story of seeking redemption and ultimately finding peace. His life had strife. Notably, Hera's anger plagued him, causing a tragic bout of madness in his early days. To atone, he had to perform 12 labors for King Eurystheus. While some labors were violent, slaying monsters like the Nemean, lion, or the Hydra, we can frame them as problem-solving challenges rather than gore. For example, one labor was to clean the Augean stables in a day. Thousands of cattle's worth of muck accumulated over years. Heracles' solution was clever and almost whimsical. He diverted 2 rivers to wash out the filth. Imagine that. One moment the air is thick with the smell of dung. Next, a fresh flood sweeps through, and the vast stables are clean, glistening as the water flows away. That's a satisfying image of a seemingly impossible chore accomplished swiftly and naturally. It's a metaphor that even very messy problems can sometimes be solved by a creative flush, which is hope-giving. Another labor, retrieving the golden apples of the Hesperides, daughters of evening. Heracles reached the far western garden, and rather than brute force, he enlisted the help of Atlas, the Titan holding up the sky. He briefly held the sky for Atlas, so the Titan could go pluck the apples. That cooperation scenario is almost gentle, a hero sharing burden with a Titan, politely. It reminds us even the strongest hero doesn't do everything alone. Asking for help is part of true strength. There's a heartwarming aside. During one labor, capturing the Erymanthian boar, Heracles visited his centaur friend Pholus. A friendly wine-sharing turned chaotic by accident. Other centaurs got drunk and attacked. But in the calm after, Heracles gave Pholus a proper burial when the centaur died by misfortune. It shows Heracles' compassion. Heracles' final labor was the most mystical, fetching Cerberus, Hades' 3-headed dog, up to the surface. He did so by simply asking Hades for permission and wrestling the beast, without weapons, so not to harm it. He brought Cerberus to Eurystheus, and then calmly returned the dog to the underworld, patting its heads. Maybe, in essence, he went to the land of the dead and came back alive, a symbolic conquest of fear. The later stories of Heracles vary in tone, but one consistent piece. At the end of his troubled mortal life, he suffered, was poisoned unwittingly by his wife's attempt to ensure his fidelity. He built himself a funeral pyre, and it burned. Yet that wasn't the end. The myths say Zeus took Heracles up to Olympus. There he became a god, reconciled with Hera, who even gave him her daughter, Hebe, goddess of youth, as wife. And finally, Heracles found rest. So, after all heavy labors and wanderings, Heracles achieved peace and happiness, immortally so. In a bedtime context, this is reassuring. No matter how hard one's labors of life, in the end, there can be rest and reconciliation. The hero endured tremendous stress, but in Elysian realms, he can recline and drink ambrosia, all tasks done. We might imagine Heracles at a kind of eternal banquet now, laughing with the same gods who tested him, all grudges put aside. That thought encourages one to cast aside the day's burdens at the day's end and relax, having labored enough like Heracles. A gentle image. Heracles' megastar strength often overshadowed his kindness. But recall his character. He was frequently described as good-natured, even capable of great tenderness. He loved his friends dearly, mourned them, etc. We can picture him during his life having quiet moments, playing with his children, telling stories of his adventures by the hearth with a chuckle, maybe strumming a lyre. He did learn music, though ironically in youth he killed his music teacher in a fit. But let's assume, after labors, he gained patience. On Olympus, one could fancy that Heracles now perhaps tends the gods' herds, since he had skill cleaning stables. Maybe he helps feed Zeus's sacred animals with a wink. In any case, he's at ease. And importantly, he and Hera made amends. She who caused him so much trouble welcomed him as her son-in-law when he ascended. That tells us even long-time conflict can resolve into friendship. So telling Heracles' story at bedtime, one might downplay the violent bits and highlight each problem solved cleverly or through perseverance. The friendship's Theseus helped him in Underworld in some versions, etc. The comedic episodes, like Eurystheus hiding in a jar whenever Heracles brought a labor's trophy. Imagine big Heracles puzzled, while a cowardly king peeks out. That's actually humorous. The final reward, Heracles shining among stars, literally the constellation Hercules, and Olympus's halls, to a child or adult that says, hard work and endurance pay off. No struggle is endless. Even the mightiest had to try, fail, try again, and eventually were recognized and loved for their efforts. Thus, we can drift off, thinking, I did my labors today, be they small or large, and if I did them with honesty and effort, that's enough. I can rest with the quiet pride of Heracles on his pyre, knowing a peaceful reward, a good sleep, awaits. Perseus, the gentle hero, guided by gods and starry fate. Perseus's tale is one of monsters and rescues, but it is also one of divine favor, ingenuity, and compassionate bravery. It can be recounted as a fairy tale. Perseus was fated from birth to do great deeds. His grandfather, Acrisius, tried to avoid a prophecy that Perseus would cause his death, but destiny had its way. Though interestingly, in kinder terms, Perseus never knowingly or angrily harmed his grandfather. The death was an accident by a discus throw, showing Perseus's heart was never malicious. As a young man, Perseus found himself put on the spot when a king demanded he bring a horrific prize, the head of Medusa, one of the snaky-haired Gorgons, whose gaze turned people to stone. That seems like a grim quest, but Perseus had help. The gods themselves watched over him. Athena gave him a brightly polished shield. Hermes lent him an adamantine sword and the winged sandals to fly. Plus he obtained from nymphs, or the Hesperides, a cap of invisibility and a special pouch. With these kindly bestowed gifts and guidance, Perseus succeeded without being turned to stone. He approached Medusa while she slept and used the mirrored shield to see her reflection. So he safely cut off her head with minimal violence and no direct confrontation. We could nearly see it as a surgical task done swiftly, not a battle of hatred, but a mission to rid the world of a dangerous creature. Perhaps once unfortunate Medusa had her own sad backstory, which presumably Perseus mercifully wasn't aware of. In any case, two wrongs, not exactly, since Medusa had been cursed. From Medusa's blood, by the way, sprang Pegasus, the winged horse. The emergence of Pegasus is a sudden positive in the myth. Out of something lethal came a creature of beauty and freedom that later becomes Perseus's ally. This again shows even in violent myths, Greek narrative tosses in grace notes. We can focus on that. Perseus not only overcame Medusa, but was gifted Pegasus's friendship as a result. Imagine Perseus gently taming Pegasus, stroking its silvery mane the moment after that frightening episode, a soothing scene of calm after storm. On his way back, Perseus encountered Andromeda, a princess chained by the sea as a sacrifice to a sea dragon. He arrived just in time, with Athena likely guiding the winds, to see the monster approaching her. The story goes he was struck by Andromeda's forlorn bravery and beauty and resolved to save her. A short tussle ensued, in which Perseus either used Medusa's head to petrify the monster or slayed it with his blade. Now this can be pictured heroically but gently. As the creature rose from waves, Perseus swooped from the sky on Pegasus and swiftly dispatched it, almost like one might spear a dangerous fish to spare someone. The emphasis is not gore, but Perseus's compassion and quick action. Freed, Andromeda and Perseus gazed at each other with gratitude. Love budded calmly under the sunny sky as her parents and people rushed to thank the hero. Later, Perseus and Andromeda married and lived happily, eventually founding a lineage through their son, Perses, from which ultimately Heracles and others descended. Also, at life's end, Athena placed Perseus among the stars as a constellation, along with Andromeda and her parents, and even the fearsome sea monster as Cetus, and Pegasus too. So the saga literally became star lore, a permanent cosmic storybook. This is a satisfying closure. Perseus's exploits are not tragedies, but do end in domestic bliss and honored memory. In a soothing retelling, one can dwell on the helpful roles of gods, meaning you're never alone in your tasks. The serene flight on Pegasus, under clear skies, imagine gliding like a flying dream, so wonderful, and the tender romance of Perseus and Andromeda. Additionally, Perseus was a respectful hero. After his quests, he returns to his aging mother Danae and rescues her from an unwanted suitor, the reason he was forced to seek Medusa in first place, by turning the bad king to stone with Medusa's head. A neat, almost comical comeuppance. That arrogant king literally petrified mid-boast, perhaps. After that, Perseus hands Medusa's head to Athena, who places it on her shield, showing he's not power-hungry. He disposes of the dangerous artifact responsibly. Then he and family rule his kingdoms with justice. One can end the story with, and Perseus and Andromeda ruled wisely and happily for many years, beloved by their people. And when at last they left the mortal world, the gods set them in the stars so that their story would be remembered and guide others. That certainly feels gentle and complete. For the sleeper's mind, Perseus's myth offers assurance that with smarts and the right support, one can overcome even petrifying challenges. And that acts of saving and kindness, like saving Andromeda, bring love and reward naturally. Also, the cosmic placement is comforting. It implies that noble deeds, lives are immortalized, a form of spiritual continuation we can fantasize about. One might even imagine looking out the window at night, spotting the faint grouping of Perseus's constellation. Perhaps a father or mother could whisper to a child, "See those stars? That's brave Perseus riding on Pegasus. He's up there watching that no monsters bother us." Next to him, over there, is Princess Andromeda. She's free in the sky too. The child, or inner child, sleeps feeling protected and dreaming of starry heroes shining down. Orpheus, the lullaby of the lyre and the gentle sorrow of music. We discussed Orpheus a bit, in passing with Eurydice's tragic parting. But Orpheus's story, albeit sad, can be gleaned for its soft power, the power of music and love to charm even stones and spirits. Orpheus was the greatest musician, son of Calliope, the muse of epic song, and a Thracian king perhaps. His lyre, taught by Apollo, made trees uproot to follow, and wild beasts lay tamely to listen. No heart could remain hard once Orpheus played. Even the normally fierce warriors or indifferent gods felt tears or newfound tenderness. When Orpheus's beloved wife Eurydice died from a snakebite, the grief-stricken bard resolved to attempt the impossible, to retrieve her from Hades. Armed not with sword but with lyre, Orpheus descended into the underworld. There, his gentle singing and playing achieved what no hero's strength could. It made the triple-headed Cerberus curl up like a puppy, soothed the damned souls tormented to pause their suffering, and brought the Erinyes furies to weep. Their harsh resolve softened. Even Hades and Persephone found themselves moved by the living mortal's lament. They granted Orpheus a chance. Eurydice could follow him back to life, on one condition. He must not look back at her until both had reached the upper world. Joy surged in Orpheus. He thanked them and began leading Eurydice upward through the dim passages. He heard her soft footfalls, and in his heart brimmed excitement to fully see her. But he kept reminding himself of the rule. Just as he stepped out into the light above, he turned eagerly, forgetting that Eurydice was a few steps behind, still in the tunnel's shadow. In that split instant, he saw her, but her form wavered and faded, drawn back into the dark, with a final whisper of farewell. Orpheus's cry of heartbreak echoed off the rocks. Eurydice was gone a second time, this time forever. This part is undeniably tragic, but in a calm telling, one can frame it as, some things are not in mortal hands to change, and Orpheus's almost success shows both the power and limits of love. He returned to Earth, profoundly sad, yet, what did Orpheus do? He sang. He roamed the forests of Thrace, refusing to love another, but pouring his sorrow into music so poignant that it comforted all who heard, except perhaps some who in their envy or misunderstanding ended up killing him in rage. A chaotic end where he's torn apart by Maenads, Dionysus's frenzied devotees. However, even that violent death is softened by myth. The muses gather his remains and bury them reverently. His severed head, still singing, floats down a river, continuing to enchant, a symbol that art, song, outlives the artist's demise. Zeus places Orpheus's lyre among the stars as well, and the spirit of Orpheus reunites with Eurydice's shade in the underworld, where it's said they stroll together peacefully through the Elysian meadows, never needing to fear a second loss because they're beyond such trials now. So how to extract comfort? Orpheus's tale affirms the consoling power of music. If extreme grief can't be overcome, it can be expressed in art, which in itself soothes. Many find lullabies or melancholic songs oddly comforting when sad. Orpheus's presence in myth embodies that idea. He couldn't bring Eurydice back, but his music gave solace to others, and perhaps to himself, enough to endure until their eventual reunion in death. Even his failure has a gentle lesson. Human flaws, impatience, doubt, are natural. Even a perfect musician wasn't perfect in trust. That invites self-forgiveness in us. Orpheus wasn't punished by gods for turning. They likely sympathized Persephone herself being one who also parted from her mother. She might have felt pity, but rules are rules. The tragedy was just tragedy. not moral failure exactly. Sometimes things just don't work out. A truth that lullabies often carry, que sera sera vibe. And those left behind, Demeter or Orpheus, must find ways to live on. Orpheus's head continuing to sing is both eerie and comforting. It's like saying his voice, what he stood for, love, art, can't be silenced by physical death. It's eternal, hence starlute and memory. That implies that the love Orpheus and Eurydice shared also remains in existence beyond mortal constraints. They did get to be together in the end, albeit in Hades. But notably, because Orpheus came once, Hades would treat him well after they'd roamed the easy fields of afterlife intimately. We could spin it this way. In the quiet of night, if one is lonely or missing someone, think of Orpheus. Perhaps somewhere, in some dimension, the collective unconscious, or a heaven analogue, your own beloved ones are waiting or walking with you in dreams. If Orpheus's music could travel between worlds, maybe love and thought can too. So you're never absolutely separated from whom you love. And thought many find comforting at bedtime, especially older folks or those in grief. Finally, the image of Orpheus's lyre as a constellation, Lyra, means every time we see the twinkle of those stars, it's like a lullaby from Orpheus across time and space. Indeed, a common bedtime activity is to listen to soft music. Perhaps imagine that lullaby you play is indirectly courtesy of Orpheus's spirit, the archetypal musician soothing human hearts nightly. To retell Orpheus gently, focus on the tender love of Orpheus and Eurydice's initial happiness. Then, the bravery of Orpheus to go to dark underworld for her. What love! Then, the nearly miraculous concession by Hades and Persephone, who rarely give up souls. They were moved by Orpheus, highlighting how extraordinary his gift was. The despair of the second loss is heavy, but then Orpheus doesn't direct anger at the gods or fate. He simply mourns through song. That's instructive. When angry or sad, channel it into something beautiful, or at least cathartic, not destructiveness. Then Orpheus meets an unjust end, but from that ugliness emerges the enduring beauty of his music, which ironically influences even nature after death. It's like saying, the cruelty in life, the maenads tearing, couldn't destroy his essence, a hint of moral universe that cruelty is fleeting, but art, or love, remains. At last, he's with his love again beyond mortal life. That closes the story as a gentle afterglow. Maybe things didn't work out in life, but beyond, they find peace, a concept that historically helped many accept tragedies. For bedtime, one might read or think of a poem about Orpheus, or play a lilting melody in memory of Orpheus's lyre, letting that represent all comforting music around us that helps keep sadness at bay. Perhaps as one sleeps, imagine hearing faint harp strings in the distance, just imagination, or maybe an actual harp music track, softly playing. That is Orpheus sending calm through the night, assuring you that whatever sorrow or difficulty, there is beauty still that you can hold on to. By recounting these hero stories not as high-octane adventures, but as parables of resilience and eventual reward, we lull our psyche with hope and courage. Each hero we covered, Heracles, Perseus, Orpheus, dealt with fearsome trials, yet found resolution. Heracles, immortal peace; Perseus, family happiness; Orpheus, eternal reunion after an impactful life. Perhaps another quick mention, Odysseus. After 20 difficult years, he got to go to bed in his own home, in his faithful wife, Penelope's arms. The Odyssey ends literally with them going to bed together, signifying his long journey ended in restful domestic bliss. That's a wonderfully cozy image. The weary wanderer finally under his own roof with love beside him, sleeping safe and content. We all in some way are like Odysseus each day, journeying out and returning home. To recall his story at bedtime is to reinforce the feeling of, I made it through trials, now I can safely rest. In summary, heroic myths don't have to stimulate with action. They can comfort with their conclusions. They reassure that most difficulties pass. Helping hands, divine or not, often appear when needed. Loved ones can be protected or saved, even when mistakes happen. Not all is lost forever. There's honor in striving and no shame in resting after. At day's end, the brave deserve and usually find a peaceful haven. With those assurances drawn from myth, one can drift to sleep, feeling accompanied by the spirits of heroes, not as roaring figures, but as kindly watchers who've been through it all and now quietly guard the sleepers of the world, perhaps turning our pillows into part of the clouds of Olympus or Elysium for the night. Now that our minds are calm, heartened by these age-old tales replete with eventual calm, we can move on, in the next chapters, to the quieter aspects of daily ancient Greek life, how myth and divine presence gave rhythm and comfort to ordinary living and sacred resting places alike. But always, in these narrative interludes, remember the gentle heroes and lovers who overcame. Their essence stays with us in myth, like friendly stars or muses in the dark. Chapter 7. Mythology in Daily Life. How the Greeks wove legend into every sunrise, meal, and starry night. While grand myths of gods and heroes filled Greek imaginations, equally important was how those myths quietly imbued the pattern of everyday life. From dawn to dusk and through the seasons, ancient Greeks felt the presence of their deities and stories in ordinary activities, finding comfort, guidance, and meaning. In this chapter, let's stroll through a typical day and year in an ancient Greek town or countryside, noticing how mythology influenced the rhythm of life, often in ways that were peaceful and reassuring. In doing so, we might reflect on parallels in our own lives, how simple rituals and an awareness of something bigger can grant a sense of stability and belonging. Morning, the dawn's goddess and a family's prayer. Imagine it's early morning in a small Greek village. The sky is still a gentle grey, the air cool and still. A rooster crows. To the Greeks, that was a signal heralding Eos, the rosy-fingered dawn goddess, who leads her horses across the sky to bring up the sun. Indeed, they pictured dawn as a goddess with pink saffron robes, scattering flowers or dew from her fingers. Believing this, a person could wake with a sense of serene renewal. The dawn isn't just a time, it's a kindly deity opening the gates of day for you. A mother in her courtyard might lift her face to the first rays and murmur, "Good morning, Eos, and thanks." A farmer heading to the fields might feel the soft light as a divine smile. They might hear birds chattering and think of Eos's siblings, the sun, Helios, soon to shine full, and the moon, Selene, gone to rest, a family of lights taking turns to watch over the world. That narrative, day and night as kin, lends a coziness to the cosmos. Everything is in order and related. In homes, the hearth is remade after its night's slumber. The embers of Hestia's fire are gently stirred, and perhaps small wood added. The father or mother of the house takes a moment to utter a little prayer. Hestia, remembering she's the first and last of the Olympians in rituals. They sprinkle a few drops of wine or place a morsel of bread in the flame as an offering, symbolically including the goddess in their breakfast. This habit is comforting. It reinforces that the home is sacred and protected by a benevolent force. Children wake to the smell of barley, porridge, or warm goat milk. Perhaps they're told why roosters crow, because they see Eos rising from the sea, driving a chariot of 2 golden horses. They cheer her on, so Helios, the sun, follows swiftly. That's a charming thought for a child. Every sunrise is a little victory over night, with a rooster as dawn's herald. Instead of, say, worrying about darkness, they look forward to dawn's return each day as assured. Work and daytime, gods in toil and play. As villagers go about chores, mythology is at hand. The ploughman guiding oxen in the field might softly invoke Demeter to bless the furrows, and Persephone too. Remain kindly in the underworld, just enough that seeds can germinate. Since Persephone, above ground, means spring, below means time for seeds to await. If it's spring, Persephone is out and about, so Demeter is in a good mood. The ploughman feels encouraged seeing green shoots. If it's autumn nearing Persephone's descent, he hurries to harvest, knowing nature will soon sleep, but also trusting that cycle's fairness. The blacksmith pounding metal may offer a brief hail to Hephaestus, the divine smith, feeling that the sparks and glow of the forge are a minor echo of Hephaestus's great volcanic forge. This link gives pride and patience. If his iron takes time to shape, well, even the god's works took time and skill. Hephaestus's perseverance, famed for his work ethic and overcoming his lameness to create wonders, inspires the mortal craftsman to keep laboring diligently, a psychological support to continue a repetitive task with dignity. In the midday heat, a traveler might stop by a herm, a roadside stone pillar with Hermes' head, to rest in its shade and perhaps pour a little water at its base as homage. He believes Hermes will grant him a safe remaining journey if he shows respect. This little ritual turns an ordinary break into a meaningful pause, making him feel not alone on dusty roads, but accompanied by Hermes' watchful eye. Loneliness and fear of bandits fade somewhat under Hermes' reputed protection. The traveler might recall young Hermes protecting cattle or escorting heroes, comforting analogies. Meanwhile, women at home grind grain singing a hymn to Athena, thanking her for giving men the knowledge of agriculture and women the skill of weaving and domestic crafts. They see their loom as Athena's gift. She invented it, or at least taught the first weavers. If a thread tangles, maybe they lightly joke, "Ah, Arachne's mischief," referencing the girl. Athena turned to spider, so no frustration, just mythic humor. Each finished cloth they quietly dedicate to Athena's praise. This mentality lifts the mundane. Weaving isn't drudgery, it's following the goddess's footsteps, maybe with Athena invisibly guiding their shuttle. They might even show their daughter how to set threads while telling Athena versus Arachne story as a gentle caution against boasting but also as entertainment, tying learning a skill to a memorable myth. At noon, when lunch is eaten, a bit of food is set aside for the household gods, perhaps the Zeus Ctesios jar, Zeus as protector of storerooms, or Apollo Agiaeus pillar at the door, or just a corner for Agathos Daimon, the good spirit. The family pours a libation of diluted wine to Hestia first, then to these protective gods, saying, "May we always have enough." This daily thanksgiving fosters contentment and reduces anxiety about want. They feel, the gods have provided this meal. They will continue to if we honor them. A psychologically soothing cycle, far from entitlement. It instills gratitude and modest hope. Afternoon routines, teaching myth and finding heroes in nature. If it's a school day for boys, primarily, girls often learned at home. An elementary teacher might use mythic examples to teach morals. Under a shady plane tree, he tells the students of Thales, a legendary early philosopher, who said, "Know thyself." Actually, that was on Delphi's temple, but likely attributed to wise men. Or he recounts the myth of King Midas to warn them greed can backfire, done in a humorous tone, so kids laugh, picturing Midas struggling to eat gold bread, and thereby internalize the lesson lightly. During athletic training, very important in Greek daily life, young men recall Heracles and Theseus, not as gory slayers, but as epitomes of strength and protection. A wrestling coach might say, "Remember how Heracles held firm against the giant Antaeus by lifting him off earth, which gave him strength. Find your opponent's weakness likewise." This interplay of mythic strategy encourages creative thinking, even in sports, making physical exercise a heroic reenactment rather than a pointless drill. It's inspiring and ensures that contest remains friendly under the patronage of Hermes, god of gymnasiums, and Apollo contests. If one scrapes a knee, a friend might jest, "No worry, Asclepius will heal it," referring to the healing god, which in a subtle way may indeed reduce panic or pain through psychological comfort. Women retrieving water at the fountain in late afternoon might share local folk tales, myths in microscale. Perhaps Artemis was seen last full moon, guiding a lost hunter out of the woods, or a nymph was heard singing near the spring at dusk. Whether believed literally or not, these stories add charm and sanctity to everyday sights and tasks. The spring isn't just a water source, it's home of a naiad who expects the women to keep the area clean and to sing as they gather water to please her. By personifying nature's elements with myth, Greeks practiced a kind of environmental reverence and mindfulness automatically. One wouldn't casually pollute a stream if one believes a divine being dwells there. That fosters a healthy environment and a mentally safe feeling that each part of one's world is looked after by some friend or minor deity. Evening, family gatherings, storytelling, and the quiet offerings at day's end. As the sun sets, families reconvene for the main meal. Sunset has its deity, Hesperus, the evening star, Venus, and the Hesperides nymphs of dusk, who tend golden light, and sometimes a tree of golden apples in myth. Perhaps the sky's pink and gold edges bring to mind those mythic golden apples Heracles once fetched. Father might mention that story while everyone washes hands and prepares to dine, turning the sky's beauty into an admired mythic symbol. For example, the Hesperides are painting the sky with colors of their garden now. The notion gentles the transition to night. At dinner, first they again pray to Hestia, some wine on her hearth, then lift a cup to Zeus Xenios, protector of guests, to remember any stranger who might need help, and Zeus Ktesios, of household abundance. Often, a portion of food is taken outside to a small shrine at the gate, offering to Hermes or Agathos Daimon, good spirit, or for the poor, as myth encourages, feeding strangers since they may be gods. This constant practice meant no Greek felt they ate without caring for unseen or less fortunate. That altruism, embedded in mythic duty, ironically fed their own souls, making them content and not guilty enjoying their portion. Everyone contributes to cosmic hospitality. After dinner, in the mild twilight courtyard or by the hearth in colder times, families told stories. These could be myths or local legends, or even fables. Aesop's fables often had slight mythic touches, or anthropomorphic animals, which were beloved instructive tales. The children listened wide-eyed, the adults perhaps doing small evening chores, mother spinning wool, father mending a tool, but all chiming in to correct or add detail to the storytelling. A communal recreation. It ties them to ancestry. Grandfather heard this from his father about Pan, saving our village's crops one year. And to future, children will retell these to their kids. Mythology here functions as a bonding agent across generations. Psychologically, that gives each person a feeling of continuity and belonging to something bigger than just that day's toil. If a child had been mischievous, maybe a gentle scare-straight tale was told. Don't wander into that olive grove at noon. That's when Pan naps. And if you wake him, he'll panic you with sudden fear. Panic comes from Pan. So child thinks twice about sneaking off at wrong times. But these cautionary bits are seldom terrifying, often comedic, or at least, Balance Pan himself is mostly benign, aside from such midday grumpiness. If a child is shy to bathe, a parent might jokingly say, "No need to fear, the nymphs of the bath will keep the water warm and pleasant." Thus, even personal hygiene becomes charmed. Finally, as the children go to sleep, parents might softly recite a hymn or prayer to Zeus and Hera to guard the home, to Artemis to keep evil away in night, since she roams with her bow under moon, to Hypnos for sweet dreams, etc. Typically, the last libation of wine was to Hestia, again closing the ritual day. If any family member travelled and wasn't home, they prayed to Hermes and Hecate, goddess of crossroads, who also protects households at threshold, to light that person's path and bring them safely back. As Hecate guided Demeter once, so she guards all wanderers in dark. This gave comfort that divine eyes were on their loved ones far away. Then the hearth's fire was banked, lights dimmed, looking at the starry sky overhead. In a rural Greek location, it must have been brilliant. They identified constellations and recalled the myths behind them. There's Orion, still chasing the Pleiades, who in myth he loved. Every clear night he still chases them across heavens. There's Callisto, the bear, Ursa Major, circling the pole star and never dipping into ocean because she was set there by Zeus. Such stories likely ended the day on a contemplative note. Anything done or suffered in mortal world was mirrored and immortalized in the stars. A family's story might also metaphorically join that great cosmic tapestry if they live justly. That encourages one to reflect on one's actions and maybe find peace, thinking, we're part of something grand and ordered. Good night. Hecate, often misunderstood as spooky, was actually often honored at trivets, three-way crossroads, with small offerings, Deipnon, meal for Hecate at new moons, to ward off negative spirits. At Mena, the month's end, families put out a dish at the doorstep for Hecate, which likely fed a poor person or stray dog, thus a charity built in. Thus, going to bed on new moon, they felt any accumulated bad luck or influence was carried off by Hecate's stray dog companions, kind of a spiritual house cleaning monthly. They could start next day fresh, psychologically lighter. In sum, the entire daily life was saturated with gentle mythic consciousness. Nature's every aspect was friendly, or at least approachable through myth. Routine acts like eating, working, traveling, sleeping, were enhanced by little devotions that provided mental anchors and positivity. Holidays, not covered but important, came regularly, celebrating myths with feasts and plays, more joy injection. The presence of mythology meant no one felt isolated. Gods were like an extended family caring for them. People did their part: prayer, offering, virtue, and felt gods reciprocated with blessings, health, harvest, etc. That trust alleviated existential anxieties. Therefore, re-envisioning a Greek daily life scene reveals a calm, cyclic harmony. They woke with dawn's gentle greeting, labored under watchful Zeus's sky by day, gathered under Hestia's warmth by evening, and slept under Nyx's quiet veil, with Hypnos pouring sleep and Oneiroi delivering hopefully nice dreams, all believing that if any problem brewed, a god or hero's example was there to guide a solution next morning. We can draw from this for our lives, perhaps incorporate small mythic moments. For example, whisper thanks to sun for a new day, or to earth, Demeter, for a meal. Tell beloved old stories to family to create continuity. See the night sky not as random but as familiar shapes with meaning. These little acts can bring steadiness and meaning to our daily routine. Just as for the Greeks, weaving mythology into daily living made each day a mini-epic with them, as both protagonists and cherished parts of a cosmos, filled with allies. So, having walked through a mythical Greek day, one senses how safe and structured they felt, and thus perhaps we find inspiration to treat our own mundane tasks with a bit of mythic imagination, turning chore into rite, and day's end into homecoming on a spiritual scale. It's profoundly comforting, like being a child cared for by responsible, loving elders, the gods. That trust in the daily pattern and benevolent forces is something we can borrow to ease modern stress as we wind down at night. Chapter 8. Sacred Spaces. Temples, Rituals, and Festivals as Islands of Peace and Community. Beyond the daily domestic sphere, Greek mythology also manifested in special places and times set aside for worship, celebration, and communal bonding. These sacred spaces, the serene temples, tranquil groves, and uplifting festivals, provided the Greeks with opportunities to step out of ordinary life's demands and experience a sense of higher peace and togetherness. By visiting a temple or attending a festival, they could feel closer to their gods and to each other in a harmonious setting. Let's gently explore a few examples of these hallowed environments and rituals, appreciating how they contributed to a calm and confident society. Temples and shrines, oases of calm and reflection. Picture walking up a slight hill on a quiet afternoon, toward the Temple of Athena in the outskirts of town. The sun is mellow, cicadas chirr softly. As you approach the temple, gleaming columns amid olive trees, you naturally slow your steps. Conversation, if any, hushes. The temple's courtyard is open to the sky, perhaps with a gentle fountain or a basin where worshippers wash hands, a symbolic purification that also literally cools and refreshes. Inside or at the portico stands a statue of Athena, serene and majestic, perhaps holding a small Nike victory figure. The space smells faintly of olive oil from the lamps, and maybe fresh laurel leaves strewn on the floor. A lone priestess or priest might be present, but there's no big crowd now. You might be one of a handful of visitors. You approach the statue and place a small garland of wildflowers at its feet, a simple offering from your walk here. In that moment of offering, you close your eyes and say a private prayer. It could be as straightforward as thanks for help in weaving a fine cloak, or a request for wisdom in a family decision. The sanctity and quiet in the temple feel profound. It's as if time slows. The marble around you is cool. The temple walls insulate from outside. Bustle. Many temples were open air, no doors. But psychologically, stepping onto temple platform felt like entering another realm. People often described feeling a naos, sacred aura, especially if alone or nearly alone there. These temples were often placed in beautiful, slightly remote spots, on an acropolis, high point, or near a spring, for water sounds. So visiting them was akin to a peaceful mini pilgrimage. One returned home with a lighter heart, convinced one's prayers were heard, and whatever outcome, the goddess or god would oversee it fairly. This trust dispels worry. The Greeks did not gather in temples for sermons. Rather, each person or family communed with the deity more personally, except during festivals. So a temple was really an ideal meditative environment. You might sit on a bench under its colonnade after praying, just soaking in the presence of the deity, listening to breeze play among columns. It was accepted to do so. As far as evidence suggests, temples were not always busy. Often they were quiet zones, except on festival days. Thus, temples served as a mental health refuge too. If troubled, one might spontaneously go to Asclepius's sanctuary for incubation, sleeping overnight, hoping for a dream cure. The very act of being in that safe, sacred space likely already provided comfort enough to rest well, and often patients did dream of Asclepius or his symbols like a benign snake, and woke feeling better. This is an early form of spiritual therapy, linking faith and healing. A notable sacred space is the Oracle of Delphi, visited less for calm than for counsel. Yet the environment itself was awe-inspiring and likely gave visitors a sense of partaking in cosmic order. People ascended a slope with many treasuries, mini-temples, donated by city-states, past the sacred Castalian spring, where they bathed before consulting the oracle, a physically refreshing ritual in likely cold water under a ravine's shade. Then the main temple, where a laurel-wreathed priestess, the Pythia, delivered Apollo's cryptic answers. The intense tranquility when the Pythia went into trance. One can imagine the whole temple and waiting courtyard falling silent, the only sound being perhaps the wind or the light tinkling of a chime. Must have been a goosebump moment. Even if the prophecy was ambiguous, pilgrims often left feeling their problem was acknowledged by the divine. An answer, even if puzzling, was given. That alone relieved them of the stress of not knowing what to do. They had guidance. They might mull it on the way home through scenic mountains, which by itself fosters calm. For everyday folks, their local hero shrines or sacred groves offered similar solace. A farmer could sit by a small altar to Demeter in his field after sowing seed, pouring some milk on the ground and silently trusting Demeter to take it from there. The restful acceptance after doing one's part is aided by having that physical act of handing over a gift to the gods, sort of like saying, "I've done what I can, now I give this matter to divine hands." That indeed reduces the anxiety of constant control. Even graveyards and tombs were considered near sacred. Why else have small enclosures or stone benches by them? Families would go, tend, and talk to deceased as if the spirit hears. This kept emotional bonds alive and eased grief. The myth that underworld exists and souls continue meant visiting a gravesite was not just sorrowful, but could be half ritual, like a communication attempt. Possibly, they told themselves, glimpsing a particular bird or breeze, there was the loved one's acknowledgement. That again offers comfort in a spatial way. The burial area becomes a gentle park rather than just a sad place. They likely found calm strolling among ancestors' tombs, recalling stories like, "We did with heroes among stars, they do with family in tombs." Festivals, communal joy and reassurance, divine favor. At intervals throughout the year, normal life paused for festivals, Hi-or-Tai, dedicated to various gods. These events combined religious, social, and entertainment functions, and they were vital for the community's psychological well-being. Consider the Eleusinian mysteries of Demeter and Persephone. Initiates, including many average citizens, would partake in secret rites that dramatized Persephone's descent and return, culminating in a kind of beatific revelation inside Demeter's telesterion hall. It's said those who experienced this no longer feared death. The festival stretched days, included a pilgrimage from Athens to Eleusis, with jests and song, lightening communal mood, a day of fasting, heightening eventual euphoria when fast broken, and the climactic night of mystery culminating in dawn, possibly showing a reaped ear of wheat symbolizing rebirth or Persephone's return. The combination of group catharsis and promise of afterlife blessing make the participants afterwards serene and hopeful. So a festival gave them not only a break from toil, but an existential comfort. Dionysian festivals, like Dionysia in Athens, allowed release of pent-up frustrations via watching tragedies and comedies. In tragedies, audiences cried for mythic heroes, purging personal sorrows, catharsis, as Aristotle defined, in a safe setting. In comedies, they laughed at political figures, or even the gods in farce, relieving social tensions in a permitted, ritualized way. And this was done outdoors in bright daylight, with thousands of fellow citizens, a solidarity experience, making one feel part of a greater, enduring city beyond personal troubles. After a day of theatre, the city likely felt cleansed and bonded. Pan-Hellenic games, Olympics, Pythian, etc., were religious festivals as well, dedicated to Zeus, Apollo, etc., but functioning like peaceful gatherings of often warring Greeks to honor common culture. Spectators found pride and cheer in athletic excellence, and also reassurance that all Greeks worship Zeus together, a unity under Divine Father. At night during Olympics, perhaps one saw other city folks camped by Alpheus River eating, singing. Someone might share a story or wine with nominal enemies in war, because at Olympia, they're just all Hellenes. That fosters broad peace of mind, a sense of Greekness bigger than petty conflicts, a spiritual comfort akin to a truce, which indeed occurred. Olympic truce halted wars. Even small local festivals, for example, a springtime Artemis festival where girls played the bear at Brauron by dancing wearing saffron robes to appease Artemis for an old mythic offense, imparted psychological milestones. Those girls, playing bear, were performing a mythic narrative of transformation, which helped them transform from childhood to puberty in the eyes of community with joy rather than fear. The festival context, singing, dancing, myth enactment, replaced anxiety about growing up with excitement and pride. Artemis blesses them now. Ritual thus guided life transitions gently. Feasting in festivals was crucial. Sacrificing an animal to a god, then Sharing the roast meat among participants was a sacred communal meal. Many poor seldom ate meat except at festivals, so besides nutrition, it reaffirmed fairness. Gods essentially fed the people in return for devotion. Everyone at festival is temporarily equal, enjoying same holy meat, same wine. That social leveling and collective gratitude, thanks Zeus for this meal in his honor, is deeply comforting. It dissolves everyday hierarchies and stresses for at least a day. At festival nights, after formal parts, one can imagine people relaxed under starry skies around bonfires outside a temple, telling far less formal, humorous myths, or singing, children falling asleep in parents' laps, safe among entire polis gathered. A super tribe, guarded by Zeus and Hera's overhead presence. That image is the epitome of security and joy, like a cosmic campout where no threat exists because it's holy time out of time. Thus, festivals, whether solemn, Eleusis, or celebratory, Olympia, all had the effect of renewing personal and communal hope, releasing negative emotions, and reinforcing the notion that the gods watch benevolently when honored properly, forging an optimistic outlook. Pilgrimage and travel, seeing the mythical world beyond. A farmer who rarely left his valley might one day, after saving money or making arrangements, go on a pilgrimage to, say, Delphi or Olympia, or even Athens for Panathenaic festival. The journey itself along sacred roads, lined with wayside shrines and herms, was likely uplifting, a break from routine with spiritual purpose. Arriving at a grand site filled with statues of heroes and gods could produce inspiring awe, meaning that pilgrim returns home with expanded perspective. The gods are truly great. I saw Zeus's huge ivory statue. He looked so kindly yet powerful. It reminded me to be just and hospitable. Bringing back a vial of holy water or a laurel from Delphi to share with family extended the peaceful aura to his household. Travel to holy places thus served like modern retreats. One leaves worldly worries behind for a bit, absorbs sacred calm, and carries some back. It's likely pilgrims experienced a lingering afterglow, sleeping better, speaking kindly, post-pilgrimage. Even non-specifically religious travel, visiting relatives in another city, etc., often entailed visiting that city's patron deity temple as courtesy, which further spread goodwill. For example, a Corinthian visiting Athens might pray at Athena's Parthenon, feeling Athena's acceptance, though he's foreign. Mythologically, all cities' gods cooperated on Olympus, so mortal visitors felt safe under host city's deity. This likely reduced xenophobia and made traveling Greeks feel at home anywhere. Greek culture was, because same pantheon and core myths bound them. In sum, these sanctified places and times offered Greeks a structured release and renewal beyond daily coping. When they returned to work or home after a festival or pilgrimage, it was with lighter hearts, reinforced trust in cosmic order, and communal solidarity, all antidotes to stress and despair. End of day. Reflection. The mythic landscape. Today, we might glean that weaving little, sacred spaces or moments into our lives can similarly calm us. It needn't be elaborate. Maybe a quiet corner of your room with a candle becomes your temple for 5 minutes of thankful meditation, or a weekly nature walk as a personal festival of earth. Perhaps adopting a repetitive ritual like morning coffee time, used for mindful gratitude, is a modern, mythical routine. The Greeks show that no matter how pragmatic life is, they had wars, plagues, taxes too, layering it with mythic significance, richly soothes the human spirit. And if one ever visits actual remains of Greek sacred places now, ruins of Delphi, Olympia's field, Athens' Acropolis, one often senses a lingering, peaceful majesty. Those stones saw centuries of sincere hopes and joys. It's as though the psychological imprint of millions of contented pilgrims still vibrates faintly, giving even modern tourists a surprising calm among the ruins. It's not purely imagination. It's the real effect of a place dedicated to meaning for so long. Therefore, by understanding how mythology created sanctuaries in time, festivals, and space temples, shrines, even the home hearth, we can appreciate the blueprint to create sanctuaries in our own fast-paced life. Take purposeful pauses, mark transitions with small rites, like lighting a relaxing scent at work's end, to symbolize home time, akin to Hestia's libation. Come together with community in honest celebratory ways regularly, and respect nature zones as healing retreats. By doing so, we invite a bit of that Greek mythic serenity into our daily existence, making each day's end a bit like returning from Eleusinian mysteries, feeling that despite toil or trouble, all shall be well, as order prevails and spring comes again. As we head into the final chapter, reflecting on the lasting legacy of these myths and their language in our lives, let's hold this notion. The Greeks found innumerable ways to make life feel guided and safe via their mythology, a precious wisdom that perhaps we need to recall and apply in our hectic world to find similar comfort and sense of belonging in the grand story of humanity. Chapter 9. The Legacy of Greek Mythology, Imagination, Language, and Enduring Gentle Wisdom. Greek mythology, as we've journeyed through it, is not only a collection of old stories, it has become an integral part of the world's cultural heritage, subtly influencing how we think, speak, and find meaning. In this concluding chapter, let's reflect on how the legacy of these myths continues to shape our imagination and language, often in ways that inspire or soothe us without us even realizing it. By recognizing these threads from the past in our present, we may feel connected to something timeless and wise, which can be a comforting thought in and of itself. Mythic echoes in our language, familiar friends in words and phrases. Everyday language is sprinkled with references to Greek myths, like little nods from an old friend we scarcely remember, but whose influence lingers. Noting them can be a delightful game and also a source of metaphor that enriches our understanding. For instance, we describe a seemingly unattainable goal as a Herculean task, straight from Heracles, Hercules, and his labors. Yet, as we saw, Herculean tasks can be completed with persistence and wit. So even that phrase carries encouragement. Yes, it's Herculean, but recall Hercules succeeded. So perhaps you can too. When we talk about someone's weak point as their Achilles heel, we invoke the great hero Achilles, whose only vulnerable spot was his heel. It's a cautionary metaphor. Everyone has a vulnerability, no matter how strong. Rather than causing fear, it can breed humility and precaution, a gentle wisdom to know oneself and cover that heel, so to speak, by staying humble or seeking help where needed. It also reassures that having a flaw is normal, even Achilles did. We might say, opening Pandora's box to mean unleashing many unforeseen troubles. That myth, Pandora releasing ills into the world but also keeping hope inside the jar, gently reminds us that even when things go awry due to curiosity or accident, hope remains available to us. So, the phrase, although a warning, carries an underside that hope is the remedy for the troubles unleashed. It's almost a formula. For each Pandora's box, there is an Elpis, hope that doesn't leave us. Calling someone narcissistic or saying they have narcissism comes from Narcissus, who fell in love with his reflection. It's a negative trait in psychology, but what's interesting is the myth's resolution. Narcissus wasted away, and a flower, the Narcissus, sprang up. That's some comfort that even vain mistakes can transform into something quietly beautiful, as a lesson, like a cautionary flower. And indeed, using the term narcissism helps identify and hopefully address such behavior. The myth's purpose was partly to warn against excessive self-love to the exclusion of others. Recognizing the term is already a step to healing that trait. The Midas touch describes ability to generate wealth easily. But remember, King Midas's story, his golden touch was ultimately a curse, turning even food and loved ones to gold until he begged for release. In modern positivity spin, one might use Midas touch admiringly for a talented business person. But the myth reminds not to let greed ruin life's simple joys. We unconsciously carry that little moral every time the phrase is used, balancing praise of financial magic with awareness. Be careful what you wish for. When someone says, his Odyssey, or a personal Odyssey, they allude to Odysseus's long journey home in the Odyssey. It acknowledges that life's travels, physical or emotional, may be long and winding, but like Odysseus, perseverance and ingenuity can get one home. The word Odyssey itself has become synonym for an epic but educational journey. So if you're going through a hard trip in life, calling it your Odyssey frames it heroically. You'll get wiser and eventually reach safe harbor. We often describe overwhelming chaos as titanic or gigantic, from titans and giants who were huge, or conversely, say something small is minuscule. Interestingly derived from minus, but reminiscent of minos or miniature, not exactly Greek root, but in spirit opposite of giant. We call a long-winded punishment or ordeal tantalizing, or a Sisyphean effort, referencing Tantalus and Sisyphus in Hades, eternally toiling. Those conjure images of endless frustration, but by naming them, one in a way lightens them. This job is Sisyphean, might draw a wry smile since at least one can see humor in the futility. Also, naming it connects our plight with that of legendary figures, reminding futility has been part of human condition forever, but people still live on. It oddly comforts by normalizing some struggles as age-old. Also, lunatic stems from lunar, Roman for Selene moon, because phases of moon were thought to affect minds. Here myth meets early science speculation. While outdated in use, it's an example how mythic thinking attempted to gently explain even mental illness as not monstrous, but an external influence. The moon, ironically, somewhat destigmatizing the afflicted as under Artemis, Selene's sway rather than purely at fault. Even in technology or science, we use mythic nomenclature to inspire awe. Apollo space program, Atlas rockets holding up the heavens, apt metaphor for rocket thrust. Morphine from Morpheus, for its dreamlike pain relief. An element named titanium, after Titans, strong metal. Company names like Amazon, Powerful Female Warriors Association. These continue to carry subtle vibes of strength, wonder, or idealism borrowed from myth. Knowing this can make one smile noticing them. Feeling myths are very much alive around us. Our days of the week from planetary gods: Monday, Moon; Saturday, Saturn, etc., though more Roman, still tie to mythic cycle and zodiac signs, each a myth. Reference Sagittarius as centaur, Hercules' arrow in myth as Sagitta, etc. People take comfort or fun from astrological archetypes, basically mini-myths for personality. True or not, reading one's sign can be as comforting as hearing a myth. Ah, I'm acting like stubborn Taurus the bull. Maybe need a dose of Athena logic. It frames traits in story context, mythic themes in modern stories, familiar comfort in new guises. The core gentle wisdom of Greek myths often finds its way into modern storytelling, literature, movies, etc. Recognizing those parallels can deepen our appreciation and reassurance that the lessons still hold. For example, the concept of the heroic journey, popularized by mythologist Joseph Campbell, is basically the structure of Theseus, Perseus, Odysseus, Heracles, etc. Today's beloved fantasy and sci-fi epics, from Star Wars to Harry Potter to The Lord of the Rings, follow that pattern. Humble hero gets cool, faces trials, receives help, often a mentor acting like Athena or Hermes, descends into a dark place, literal or psychological, emerges, transformed with boon to share. We find these stories satisfying and even consoling because they echo the ancient mythic promise: through struggle comes growth and success. And you're not alone. Helpers and higher powers assist. Knowing this link consciously might make watching or reading them even more heartwarming, as if we partake in the same hope that sustained Greeks around firesides hearing of Odysseus. Many character archetypes in fiction are straight from Greek myths. Wise mentor, like Chiron, the centaur who taught heroes; loyal sidekick, like Iolaus to Heracles; femme fatale, like Aphrodite's charm misused; trickster, Hermes-like witty friend. Because these resonate archetypes, we find them comforting in their familiarity. We all know a Pandora curious type, a Hercules strong but kind friend, a Penelope faithful spouse. Realizing that can foster empathy. Ah, this co-worker bragging is like Arachne, perhaps insecure. It guides a calmer response. Maybe they need a compliment to relax. Versus me, getting angry. Using myth analogies can moderate our reactions and evoke patience or humor. Even therapy sometimes references myths to help patients externalize problems. For example, calling chronic anxiety your Hydra cut one head, another pops, meaning approach differently, cauterize roots. It gamifies coping. Slaying monsters becomes a metaphor for tackling issues piece by piece, not all at once. If one were facing Hydra, use strategy. When a worry is solved, cauterize. That is to say, implement a permanent fix or mental closure so it doesn't sprout new worry. Greek myths also emphasize balance, nothing in excess. The Delphic maxim, which is essentially the moral of Icarus: balance ambition with caution. Midas, wealth with contentment. Theseus's journey, bravery with humility. He wouldn't have escaped Labyrinth without Ariadne's thread help, etc. This calls one to a moderate mindful life, a known key to mental peace. And legacy. We named planets and constellations after Greek myth. So when stargazing or hearing NASA's missions, it's like myth's torch carried onward. Egg, seeing Jupiter, Zeus, shining calm and kingly in sky, can impart subconscious reassurance of cosmic order, or Venus, Aphrodite, twinkling lovingly at dusk, dawn, etc. The fact scientists kept those names is partly tradition, partly poetic, but for us, it keeps myth integrated with factual universe. The night sky becomes not just gas and rock, but a storybook. At a deeper level, Greek myth grapples with fundamental human issues: fate versus free will, Oedipus, etc., pride versus humility, Niobe's tragedy versus Baucis, and Philemon's reward, love versus duty, as in many hero choices. Seeing how they depicted and resolved those can counsel us gently. For example, Oedipus couldn't escape fate, but still his character and how he faced truth made him a sort of hero, ironically. That can encourage acceptance of what we can't control and focus on morality of our response. Thus, the legacy is that Greek myths gave us a rich vocabulary in words and archetypes to articulate and navigate life's journey. Using that vocabulary, even quietly in our own thoughts, can be self-soothing, like telling yourself, "This challenge is my Augean stables. Time to think outside box like Heracles." It immediately makes you feel inventive, not overwhelmed. The ever-present muse, inspiration and hope through myth's lens. Finally, the concept of the muses implies that creative inspiration is a gift that can strike any time. Many of us have felt sudden clarity or creative burst, solving a problem or expressing ourselves. Essentially, a muse's touch, as Greeks would say. Recognizing that adds a magical, optimistic dimension to life. You never know when a muse might breathe idea into your ear to fix a nagging issue or commence the fulfilling project. That possibility can help one relax during stuck times. Sleep on it. Let the muse work. Hope, perhaps the greatest gentle wisdom from myth, was literally personified, Elpis in Pandora's story. It's fitting that when all troubles escape, hope remains accessible to humans. That image of a small shining sprite left in Pandora's jar after all evil flew out suggests no matter how dark, hope is always at hand. In our proverbial box of spirit, we often mention hope with little thought, but linking it to Pandora's tale reinforces its durability. In bleak moments, one could picture that scene, a devastated Pandora, hearing a weak flutter inside the jar, opening it, expecting another scourge, but finding instead a gentle, fairy-like being, Hope, who flits out and consoles her, promising healing eventually. That's powerful. It assures that the design of our world included hope as an antidote amidst hardships. Greek myth as a whole, with all its trials and tragedies, still ends up leaving us with that enduring motif. From chaos came cosmos, order. From despair came hope. In closing, the ancient myths, their words, symbols, and lessons, still live around and within us. They reassure us that others before us faced similar fears, loves, and longings, and wove them into stories that grant insight and solace. By recognizing and cherishing that inheritance, we connect to a human saga far greater than ourselves, in which each of us, guided by the wisdom of myths, can find our own path to happiness and peace. So, next time you say someone has an Achilles heel, or you gaze at a statue of Athena in a museum, or you read of a spacecraft named Orion, take a moment to greet the myth behind it, like an old, comforting friend. These myths are not dusty tales. They are living companions in our language and imagination, always ready to offer counsel, context, or simply the joy of a good story that makes the soul feel at home in the universe. And thus, even as we conclude our journey through Greek mythology's strange, beautiful, confusing story, we carry its gentle teachings and inspirations forward, a soothing torch in our own life's night, light enough to see by and find wonder in the shadows. In the quiet that follows, perhaps we find ourselves reflecting on our favorite myth or moment. Maybe a tender image of Demeter hugging Persephone, or brave Psyche lighting the lamp to see love's face, or kind Baucis and Philemon turning into entwined trees. These images settle softly in the mind, ready to arise in times of need. Much like stars guiding travelers, the entire story of Greek mythology, with its cycles of challenge and restoration, loss and renewal, human striving and divine grace, ultimately sings a lullaby of resilience and hope to humanity. May that song stay with you as you seek your own bright tomorrow.